Hi everyone, welcome to our Griffith University Doctor of Medicine webinar. My name is Kimberly Tibbetts and I work for GlobaLinks Learning Abroad. I'm happy to introduce Anthony Bradley and Professor Tony Perkins from Griffith University, and they are going to present on Griffith University and the Doctor of Medicine program in the Faculty of Health Science. So welcome Anthony and Professor Perkins.
Hello.
Morning.
Great. So before we get started, again, thank you for attending the webinar. We've been doing quite a few of these over the last few weeks, so I definitely see a few students that have logged into a few others. But just to kind of give you an idea of who we are, GlobaLinks Learning Abroad is a provider of international education programs. So we've been in business for almost 25 years, and we've sent thousands and thousands of students overseas. So we have actually been appointed by universities like Griffith University to assist our students in the US and in Canada with the application process and also all the pre-departure services. So with our 25 years of experience, we're really able to assist students not only through that application process, because sometimes that's the easy part, but also through getting ready to go to Australia, applying for your student visa, assisting you with health coverage, all that good stuff that sometimes you just don't have the answers to, but we do. So that's kind of why we're here. And the nice thing is that all of our assistance is free. So the one thing we just ask students to do is apply directly to GlobaLinks, and we will kind of work with you through this process. So again, we're advising students applying for full degree programs at any of our 25 partner institutions. We're able to provide presentations like this with Griffith University to give you a better idea of the programs that you're applying to and make sure that you're choosing the right medical school. We answer any questions that you have, connect you with resources. We have certifying processes, so we make the application process a little bit easier. There are some application fee waivers, secure faster admissions decisions for students depending on the program, and then provide in-country orientations as well. So that in-country orientation is what we call our Virgin Cultures Orientation Program. This is typically a 4 to 6 day program, and it's an interesting location within your host country. So for example, in Australia, we actually have the Virgin Cultures program in Cairns, Australia, which is in Queensland, so about a 2-hour flight from the Gold Coast where Griffith University is located, and it's right on the Great Barrier Reef. So full of adventure, full of wildlife, and full of scuba diving and snorkeling. So we include some excursions in the orientation program and along with a ton of activities. This will also give students a chance to meet other students either attending their same program but also attending Griffith University. So this kind of gives you a nice community to fall back on when you need a break from your studies. So it's also helping you adapt, and again, this is all included when you apply through GlobaLinks, and it's an $800 value that we provide to you for free. So some pretty awesome things going on with GlobaLinks. So one of the awesome things that we get to do is have presentations like this. So I'd like to now turn it over to Anthony to give us a little overview of Griffith University, located in Queensland, Australia. On to you, Anthony.
Okay, well thank you very much, Kim, and good morning everybody out there in the interwebs. My name is Anthony Bradley and I'm sitting here with Professor Anthony Perkins from Griffith Health. But before we pass over to Professor Perkins, I'll just give a little overview, a generic insight into Griffith University as an institution. We're a relatively young institution as far as Australian universities go. And we are located in the southeast corner of Queensland in Australia. So the two pictures that you can see on the screen at the moment, on the left you've got the city of Brisbane, where we have 3 of our campuses, roughly 3 of our campuses. And then on the right hand side you can see the Gold Coast, which is where our largest campus is located and where Griffith Health is located as well. Okay, next slide, Kim. So just a little snapshot into Griffith University. We are a comprehensive university, which means we are not a university that focuses on one particular academic area, but across the whole range. Literally programs from A to Z are on offer, spread throughout 4 faculties. We have a total student body of about 41,000, and about 9,000 of those are international. So as you can see, we have a very robust internationalization policy and roughly a 25% international student body. Now those students can come from any one of over 130 different countries. China is of course the largest of our international student body, but we buck the trend in that we have a disproportionately large number of North American students as compared to a lot of Australian universities. We also have a lot of North European students that come to study with us for short programs. As I mentioned before, we've got 5 campuses, 26 schools, 9 of those belong in the Health Institute in Griffith Health, 30 or more research centers, and more than 230 exchange partners. So if you do choose to come and study at Griffith University, you will also have the opportunity to spend your a semester or 2 semesters at one of our partner institutions in another country. Okay, Kim, next one, please. So all universities badge themselves according to rankings, and we tend to stick with those 3 rankings in the bullet points there: the academic ranking of world universities, the QS World Rankings, and the CWTS Leiden Rankings. We are ranked in the top 400 universities in the world. That really is based on research output. So that's the academic side of rankings. We also subscribe to something called the ISB, the International Student Barometer, which is a student-generated ranking system that underpins their level of satisfaction, and Griffith University ranks very, very highly in that as well. We're also ranked in the top 100 of institutions in the world under the age of 50 by the Times Higher Education. Okay, Kim. We're ranked in the top 50 universities under 50 years of age for these following programs: our MBA, Politics and International Studies, Agriculture and Forestry, Communication and Media, Education, Law, Criminology, Environmental Sciences, and Sociology. Kim? As I mentioned before, we have 4 academic groups. We don't refer to them as faculties as such. They are the Arts, Education and Law, Griffith Business School, Griffith Science, and Griffith Health, which is what we'll be talking about today. The Griffith Health Group is one of the largest health groups in Australia. Now, in terms of research strengths, of course, students start off at the university at bachelor's level. They progress onto their postgraduate programs, and the research strength, we have a very good reputation at certain research levels, and these are the 12 key areas of research strategic investment: water science, drug discovery and infectious diseases, Asian politics, security and development, climate change adaptation, physical sciences, environment sciences, criminology and crime prevention. We're ranked in the top 10 in the world for criminology. This is not a reflection of criminal behavior in the area, but simply we have a very good historical precedent into criminology research. Music, sustainable tourism, health and chronic diseases, nursing and education. So 3 of those areas are directly related to our Health Institute. Okay. So we have 35 research institutes and centers that are both federally and state funded, and there are also areas of private investment as well. We are the only Australian Institute for Suicide Research and Prevention, and we also have an independent arm for drug discovery research and commercial application. Okay, we'll fly through these, and so Tony can talk. And the next one, Kim, we won't go on the research data. So our international activity last year, we had 9,000 international students and 9 outgoing students. So for us, global mobility is very important. We like to see our students moving out as well. So for international students that study with us, it's very important that they take into consideration the opportunity to go and study with one of our international partners. So if you're a US student, you might want to study with us for 1 year and then go and study with a partner in the UK or a partner in Germany or a partner in China. The only place you can't study is back in your home country of the US or Canada. We also do a lot of short courses. So for students that want to do a 2 or a 3 week program during the summer, that can be arranged as well. And we do capacity building programs for academics from our partner institutions as well. So we cover the entire gamut of academic application. Okay. Now, for this year, we have new study areas. We do landscape design, pharmacy, which can now be done in 4 years. We have 2 new Bachelor of Engineering programs. We do environmental health, medical laboratory science. At postgraduate level, we do Masters of Public Administration, Speech Pathology, focusing on audiology and occupational therapy. We also have 5 online programs which can be done from the comfort of your own home, or you can spend part of that time here to finish it off. We're also seeing changes through the Australian qualification frameworks, which will ultimately alter the length of our master's programs. And here on this slide here, you can see some of the indications of the growing area that Southeast Queensland is through the amount of financial investment made to the university. So this is extensive infrastructure development. One thing that Australia does very well is that where there is population growth, there is infrastructure investment. You'll notice on the 4th point down there, the Gold Coast University Hospital, which is running at about $1.7 billion worth of investment. It's a research hospital, it's a teaching hospital, and it also sort of conforms to the needs of all the people that live in the area of the Gold Coast, which itself has a population of more than 500,000. So as you can see, we're a comprehensive institution, we're a very international institution. We are eminently accessible for all international students wanting to study undergraduate, postgraduate, or exchange programs here. And we work very, very closely with organizations like GlobaLinks to make the transition from your home institutions to our institutions as smooth as possible. So without further ado, we're going to be focusing on our health sciences subjects here, and particularly the Doctor of Medicine. So I'll hand over to Professor Tony Perkins here, who is the Dean Academic of the Health Group. And he will be able to give a very, very clear insight into the health programs that we have, and we'll be happy to take your questions as well. So, Tony, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning our time. Before I focus, I know most of you excuse me, are interested in the Doctor of Medicine program. Before I focus on that, I'll just tell you a little bit about the health group, and it's termed a health group because we really are sort of a mega faculty. We're an amalgamation of what traditionally would be 2 or 3 faculties. So we offer about 20 different professional programs or careers, vocational training across 20 different areas, ranging from psychology and social sciences, human services, social work, through the allied health disciplines. And the allied health disciplines in our context are things like physiotherapy and occupational therapy, speech pathology, pharmacy. We also do a range of nursing programs, including midwifery, and then into the professional sort of clinical programs, dentistry, and we have the largest dental school in Australia here at the moment, and also medicine. We've been involved in, I guess, clinical education for around 10 to 15 years. As Anthony said, we're quite a young institution. Our medical program, our Doctor of Medicine is new, but our medical program has been running 10 years. We've had around 6 or 7 graduating classes come out of that program with considerable success. our focus really as being a young university is to make sure of the quality of our degree programs, which are all accredited through Australian accreditation councils, but also many of them are accredited overseas as well. And also to develop our research arm. It's been a major focus for us, is to a comprehensive university has a range of degree programs, but also backs it up with a strong research profile. So we've been spending a lot of time developing infrastructure, research capacity, recruiting some extraordinarily good researchers from overseas and nationally, and building that research framework and capacity underneath our degree programs. So our degree programs really are curricula in Australia and indeed internationally is really governed by accreditation councils. So a lot of universities in Australia and overseas, the actual content of what we teach doesn't vary enormously. It does vary, I think, a little bit, but really we are constrained a little bit in the types of material we teach because there are expectations on professional qualifications and expectations around accreditation. What is different at Griffith, I think, is how we teach and also the clinical experience you'll get here. So my words today to you really, or my talk today, are really focused around those two things. The way we teach our program, and I'll focus on the Doctor of Medicine, the medical program, and then on the types of clinical experiences you'll get if you come and do your medical training here. We run what's called the Flinders Model of Medical Education. It's a postgraduate 4-year degree program. Now Flinders University in Adelaide were the first to develop this back in the 80s, and a lot of universities across Australia have now adopted this format. So we accept bachelor graduates into our postgraduate medical program. The admissions process is a national or international exam. You're probably familiar with MCAT. We use GAMSAT is our version of that. They're very similar. And then we have an interview process. Now, for our domestic students, they come to our campus and we have a multi-mini interview process over about 45 minutes where they work through about 8 stations. And then we give them a score on the interview. They have a score on their GAMSAT, and then they have a score from the GPA of their previous degree program. And those 3 elements then make up our selection criteria for our graduate medical program. Internationally, we'll be doing the interviews via Skype. If there is enough demand, in the past we have sent teams of interviewers to Canada, and the US. But this year I think we'll see how the demand is. We'll do the initial interviews probably via Skype, which we've done in the past. It works quite well. We don't have a huge international quota into any of our degree programs. The university, as Anthony indicated, has an international focus. But in the health group, we have about 15% of our students are from overseas. One of the limiting factors is around clinical training because we have a set number of clinical places within any degree program. And the way it is in the moment on the Gold Coast and certainly in South East Queensland is most of those clinical training places are taken up by our domestic students. So for instance, our dental school, which has an intake of 100 domestic dentists, has an international intake of 20. And our medical school, which has 150 domestic intake, has an international quota of around 15 and growing up to around 20 in a couple of years. So we don't, in these professional vocational programs, we don't have a huge international intake. The ones that we do take in are very, very good, obviously, and we have quite a high demand for our international places. So that's the selection process. The degree structure and what's different about how we teach is the first couple of years of the program is really around case study problem-based learning. So you study in small groups, around 8 to 10, facilitated by one of our clinical educators. And the program is around four major themes. The doctor and knowledge, the doctor and community, the doctor and ethical practice, and then clinical skills. And so the curriculum is based around those themes, but very much focused on case studies. So each week you'd be presented with a case. You work your way through that. There'll be diagnostic information. You work as a group, facilitated by a clinical educator, and then you work your way through that case and come up with the series of diagnoses and a treatment plan, and then assessed at the end of it. Now, concurrent with that, obviously, are lectures and tutorials and things that are based around the case you're studying at the time, and align with those themes of professional practice, clinical knowledge, clinical skills, and public health. So that's the first 2 years of the program, and then the second 2 years is all clinical training. You're out in our clinical partners. We have 4 or 5 major hospitals, including our own hospital on our campus, where we train our students. And you're out training on the job, basically, as a junior doctor, as a medical student. The only time you return to campus in those 2 years is at the beginning of semester and then at the end of semester for assessments. The rest of the time you're actually on the job training. And that's a little bit different from some models of medical education both in Australia and overseas. So it's very practically orientated, and you get a lot of practical skills. So by the time you come out of the 4th year of your medical program, you've essentially had 2 years of clinical training on the job and feel prepared then for the hurly-burly of working in a clinical hospital or a clinical environment. Now, one of the other things that might be appealing to some students coming from overseas is we run what we call the Long Look program, which is our regional and rural medical education program. And we have about 25 students who elect to do those 2 years in a rural or remote clinical facility. And this is run through an agency partner called Queensland Regional Medical Education based in Toowoomba, which is about an hour and a half west of inland from the coast where we are at the moment. This is quite an exciting program, especially for those of you that might want to have a bit of an adventure in the outback. Some of you might, if you think about coming to Australia, might know that Australia is a vast continent and about 80% of the population lives in around the huddle to the coast, which is a very beautiful part of the world to live. But the inland of Australia is quite vast and quite remote. And out there, our clinical doctors, our clinical services actually are delivered by aeroplane. So we have a flying doctor service which delivers health services to a very, very large part of Central Australia. And so some of our students are out there training in these areas. It's a wonderful experience for them. It's challenging, of course, not only the distance, but also some of the environment they have to survive in. But they love it, and often they're students who grew up out there, and they go back out there to practice when they graduate. But it's another thing of something that we've developed is to have these clinical partnerships with rural and remote agencies and some communities out there, Indigenous communities too, that we've partnered with, to try and train our students in those environments to then encourage them to go out there and work as practitioners. So I think the distinguishing features about the Doctor of Medicine are certainly it's young, it's new. I guess the strength is that with being a young med school, we've learned a lot in terms of both facilities and delivery of curriculum on world's best practice. We've had the opportunity to learn from other med schools that maybe haven't done it as well as we do it. And the other thing is we've been able to really integrate this into a very strong clinical program and back it up with a very strong research program. So we're in pretty good shape. I guess at this point we can invite questions. Now,
I'd just like to sort of touch on something, just following on what Professor Perkins has just said. Australia is a relatively young country, and we do invite skilled individuals to work in Australia once they've completed their studies. So all students that have completed 2 years at postgraduate level will immediately be eligible for a post-study work visa. Now, it's pretty much a given that a professionally trained physician or a medicine student will find work very, very easily. But the visa process can be quite laborious. So what we've done is international students that have completed a program here have automatic access to a post-study work visa, which is something you can access. And then if you want to stick around longer, you can investigate ways of extending that. But certainly, we don't want to be seen as a country that invites students to study here, and once you finish, you have to leave. So there is certainly the opportunity to stick around after you finish to get some work experience. Mm-hmm. The Gold Coast campus, where the medicine program is delivered and where the majority of Griffith Health is also delivered, has on-campus accommodation. So students, when you arrive, you will be allowed to stay on campus. You can wake up in the morning, roll out of bed, and head into your lectures. So we are, across the board, very, very accommodating towards international students. So I guess now would be a good time to sort of open the floor to any questions. Kim?
Yeah, so one thing, Professor Perkins, could you go through the minimum entry requirements for the Doctor of Medicine, so the minimum GPA, minimum MCAT score?
Yeah, so the minimum MCAT scores are 50 in all subsections and sections. They're the minimum. And minimum GPA is 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we're under quite a lot of demand here. So just to give you an idea of our entry criteria for 2014 intake, the MCAT average, or the GAMSAT average, was 65, and the GPA was 6.6 out of a possible 7. So they're very high. For whatever reason, and it's probably to do with our facilities, our location, and our teaching, I guess. We are one of the most popular medical schools in Australia at the moment, and so a lot of students from around Australia who graduate from various programs are putting applications in to come to our medical school for their postgraduate medical training, which has driven up the GAMSAT cuts or the MCAT cuts in the GPA. But the minimum in those criteria are 50s across the board in the areas and overall, and then 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
And that then will put you in the box to get an interview.
An interview. Yeah. So just to convert that for everyone, that's about approximately a 2.8 out of a 4.0 on the GPA scale. And okay. The MCAT is they want a total of 24 with all 8s across.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I mean, while students are looked upon favourably if they come from a bachelor's and undergraduate study area of biomedical sciences, that's actually not necessary. I mean, they can come from any undergraduate background. The key, of course, is the MCAT or the GAMSAT, for which biomedical science prepares you better than, say, a Bachelor of Business or a Bachelor of Engineering. But ultimately, as long as the student gets through the GAMSAT or the MCAT, the bachelor's program is irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I think international students do very well in is the interview process. Often international students are a little bit more worldly and a little bit more switched on, a little bit more motivated sometimes when they're coming to Australia to study, and so they perform very strongly in the interview. And we take the interview process very, very seriously. We think that's a very important component of our selection process to get to know our students a little bit before they come and join us.
Great. Now, let's go ahead and open it up to some questions. So each one of you has a question box. So if you'd like to start typing in some questions, then we can go ahead and begin answering your questions that you type in. So feel free to ask anything about the entry requirements, about topics, subject areas. I know a lot of students usually have some questions about residencies, so feel free to just start typing in your questions, and then we'll go ahead and answer them for you.
And for those students that are listening, it is probably worthwhile mentioning that the reason that we do work with organizations like GlobaLinks is simply because they're able to provide you with an on-the-spot advisory process of not only program selection, but things like visa application systems, pre-departure information, and I believe, Kim, that you do offer post-arrival information as well, don't you?
We do, yep. So in addition to the Bridging Cultures Orientation Program, students will have access to our in-country staff. So we actually have resident staff, and we have a couple of staff that live in the Gold Coast. So, if you need anything, we're going to be here for you. You'll always have someone to go to throughout all 4 years of your program.
And Kim herself has actually been to the Gold Coast as well, so it's not too shabby here, is it?
It's not too shabby. It's actually quite lovely. And that hospital is pretty phenomenal.
It certainly is.
So it's a great facility. So it looks like we have a couple of questions from Louise. So Louise's first question is, how does the residency process work? Where will we be able to do our residency? Will it be in Australia or back in our home country?
Yeah, as part of our training program, you'll be able to do your residency here. The residency, the clinical component of training within the 4 years will be done here. If you then have a post-work visa and you're staying and elect to stay in Australia, then you would be employed by Queensland Health as a graduate of this university. Okay, so there's I guess we refer to the residency as the immediate postgraduate training, which is 1 year junior house officer role. And that would be through Queensland Health. But if you've been here for 4 years doing a postgraduate program, you would have study rights here, work rights here, work visa here, so you'd be able to do that through Queensland Health. But the clinical training within the degree, once we accept you as a medical student, then you do the degree clinical component within the degree through our hospital partners. We don't send anyone overseas for residency or clinical training.
Mm-hmm. And then the post-graduation internship, they will have the option to either apply within Australia or back in the U.S. or Canada, right?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And then the next question is, was the 6.7 out of the 7 GPA last year the minimum that you took in for international students, or was that an average of all medical students?
No, that was an average across all medical students. There were some students who came in with 5.7s, 5.8s, sort of towards the cut of 5.5, but they performed very well in GAMSAT and very well in interview. So it's not necessary, if you've got a GPA of 5.5, then that's fine, as long as the GAMSAT and the interview score are very good. We had other students who come in with MCAT or GAMSATs of high 50s, but they had a very good GPA and interview. So it's a combination of all three factors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of like what Anthony mentioned a bit earlier was those minimum requirements, the 2.8 GPA and the 24 MCAT, that's essentially just to get you an interview. So if you meet those entry requirements, you're going to get an interview, but you're not going to be guaranteed a spot because essentially, the university is going to look at all applicants all at once, correct?
The interview is really is key. Mm-hmm. I think, because it allows the academics to see how a student interacts with the people that they're talking to see their body language, their non-verbal communication, how well they communicate ideas. We do exactly the same for our aviation program. The interview is really important. You want somebody that's a personable guy flying your plane, just as you want somebody that's personable talking to you if you're sick. So the getting to the interview is key, and as Professor Perkins just said, somebody with a lower GPA has just as much potential to get into the program on the strength of the interview.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, what other questions do we have?
Anything that relates to the extrinsic side of things of study here? I mean the location of the university, costs of living. Nobody's asked how much it costs.
I know, that's interesting that you say that, Anthony, because I haven't gotten that question yet.
Well, you know what they say, if you have to ask how much it costs, you can't afford it.
Exactly. So we have a question of cost of living in the Gold Coast.
So we recommend that all international students budget about 18,000 Australian dollars per year. Okay, so that really is enough to get you here, to put you up in accommodation, and then to have a relatively good lifestyle in terms of food, transport, getting around. So all up, you should be budgeting for about $18,000 per year. The cost of living in Australia is a little bit more expensive than it is in North America, and as a result, the actual wages that you can earn are as well. So your minimum wage in Australia is about 17 Australian dollars per hour. Students are allowed to work part-time as well. So many of our students find work in the hospitality in pubs or clubs or restaurants or shops. And you're entitled then to work for 40 hours over a 2-week period. So you can offset some of your costs, but certainly you should be looking at about an outgoing quantity of about $18,000 per year.
Mm-hmm. Professor Perkins, do you see students, medical students working during their program?
Yeah, most students do. Most of our domestic students work, not only in medicine but also in all the other professions. The medical students, I think, have probably a busier timetable because especially the last 2 years that are out working in clinical environments, the amount of time they spend, working in a hospital as a medical student or being at the hospital as a medical student limits a little bit the amount they can work in other, areas, hospitality. So I guess the time, they're a little bit more time poor than some of our other students. Our average, we've done some surveys on this. I mean, our average across the group, most students are working sort of 15 to 20 hours a week, often in hospitality type jobs and waitering, all sorts of different jobs. Some of our medical students often have careers before coming here. There are people who have been teachers, now coming to medicine, and so they might pick up a little bit of locum work in terms of their professions that they might have had before coming to do medicine. But it varies. It's just a part of life. Everyone has to have some part-time work to pay the bills, so we work around that.
I mean, it boils down to the proactivity of the student. I mean, we've got a couple of engineering students that make money by going into the high schools and tutoring groups of students in mathematics. And so it boils down to how proactive the student is in looking for work. The student, your student work visa does not limit you to the kind of work that you can do. So if you are accepted into a job, you're not limited by the fact that you're on a student work visa.
Great. So I guess it looks like we don't have any more questions, but I guess I have one last question for you guys.
Okay.
Are applications open yet?
Yes, they are. For the Doctor of Medicine, we're doing rolling applications, which is good because rather than actually sitting on an accumulative, an increasingly large bunch of applications and then sifting through for the best, what we're doing is we're accepting rolling applications. So if we receive an application today and it meets the entry requirements, that student will get an interview without having to wait until a close-off date.
Great. So I guess what that means is I will be sending everyone an application tomorrow with the follow-up email, provide you a little more information on the program, the entry requirements, and we will go ahead and get you guys started on the application process. So it looks like one last question came through. Someone has a question about tuition and financial aid.
Okay, now then, tuition for the MD, the 4-year program, runs at about, I think it's $54,000 per year. So it's $208,000 for the entire 4-year program. Added to which you need to look at that $18,000 cost of living here. Now, federal aid, you'll need to actually do a little bit of homework yourself at your end, but and you'll also need to investigate how you would bring US federal aid into a medicine program in Australia. As I understand it, most Australian medical programs and universities are not registered to take students carrying US federal aid. If you are Canadian, by all means look at your provincial loan systems there. For example, the OSAP in Ontario or the Alberta student loan system over in the west of the country there. So there are loan options available, but that will have to be done as a sort of little bit of research at your end. Kim will be able to help you out with that.
Yes. So U.S. students, you are not eligible to use U.S. financial aid, but you are eligible to utilize Sallie Mae loans at Griffith University, so that's an option. And then for the Canadian students, just like Anthony said, you can use your provincial aid. I do believe that in Canada they also have professional education program loans. So there is also the possibility of taking out another private loan to cover your professional program.
And usually those loans then entitle you to interest-free borrowing for at least the first 6 months after you complete your course.
Yep, exactly. Great.
Okay.
Great. Well, I will follow up with everyone tomorrow and make sure that you have everything you need to apply to Griffith University. Thank you, Professor Perkins and Anthony, for joining us and giving us a great overview of the Doctor of Medicine program and the faculty, or the health science group, as you call them.
Okay. That'll do.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Kim. I'll send you a